Now, I'm very happy to welcome to the desk tonight my colleague Sharri Markson. She'll be back at 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, of course, Sharri, but thanks for dropping by early.
Thanks, Chris.
Congratulations on the event you hosted yesterday to raise money for the Jewish community in Sydney and focus on anti-Semitism in the community. I've talked a lot about it at the top of the program, but what struck me with that big gathering you pulled together yesterday was that these are people who are feeling the pain, feeling the intimidation and the threat, and I think, to be fair, feeling abandoned by the national government.
Absolutely.
But they're not defeated. They are determined and optimistic.
Definitely. I think there is this sense of determination, of strength in the Jewish community. You know, we're not going to put up with this unacceptable level of anti-Semitism that's been allowed to fester, allowed by politicians, by university chancellors and vice-chancellors, and by law enforcement to spread like a virus and to just explode into our lives. This isn't how we should have to live, and I think what we've seen from the Albanese government is very weak leadership. Occasionally, the Prime Minister will condemn anti-Semitism, as he did in Josh Frydenberg's documentary, but there hasn't been enough action. There have been virtually no arrests from anyone inciting hate speech, and that sets the tone for the entire country.
I'll come back to that in a moment, but tell us about the personal level. I mean, this was a public event, and I spoke to a lot of people privately before, during and afterwards, but what's it like inside the Australian Jewish community? And there must be times when tears are shed and people are feeling very fearful at the moment.
Yeah, I have to say, Chris, thank you enormously for being part of the event, for hosting a panel, for wearing the Israel pin alongside the Australian one on your suit every night. You know, non-Jews who support the fight against anti-Semitism is critical, because it's mainstream Australians who can stand up and say, this is unacceptable, we're not going to accept racism against one section of the population. There is a lot of anxiety, absolutely. There's a sense of betrayal by our leadership that this has been allowed to spread unchecked. There's fear for our children, for their lives, for future generations. I think there's particularly acute trauma, not just for Holocaust survivors, but then the generations that follow them, their children and grandchildren. There's a lot of concern that what we're seeing, you know, targeting of businesses just because they're owned by Jews, targeting of people just because they're wearing clothing or jewellery that identifies them as a Jew, that this is rising at an unacceptable level. It's got nothing to do with Israel. It's just about the religion, and there is a huge amount of anxiety and concern about that.
All right, it's an event organised by Sharri Markson, so obviously there had to be some news come out of it. You interviewed Peter Dutton, and he made very clear that the laws already exist, that people could be arrested, that law enforcement authorities could be doing this. Here's some of what Peter Dutton said.
If you look at the chants and the intimidation that's taken place, I don't accept that that is not against Australian law.
Government should act.
Very strong comments from Peter Dutton. He spoke at length about this. I'm going to play a bit more on my show at 8 p.m. But his point of view is that the laws against hate speech do exist, that he says there's a case not just for the protesters at the Opera House on October the 9th, but also for the activists at university campuses. He says we have seen, in his view, incitement of hate speech. Dave Sharma, the former Australian ambassador to Israel and Liberal senator, he backed him up and said, we need to use the laws available to us. Both of them said, look, if there are concerns about elements of the laws, then that should be tested. You don't just not use laws in case they're unconstitutional, in case they fail. Use them. And they have this sense that actually police do want to enforce the law.
And let the courts decide. And if the laws don't work, then revisit them. Thanks so much for joining us, Sharri. I really appreciate it.
Chris.
Congratulations again on the event yesterday, and we look forward to seeing you at 8 o'clock.
Thank you so much.
Sharri Markson there. She's back with Sharri tonight at 8 o'clock.